Welcome dear audience, students and scholars. Here I am Dr. Amjad Ali. In this video we will learn about thinking like an economist. Dear scholars, every field of study has its own language and its own way of thinking. Mathematicians talk about axiom, integrals and vectors. Psychologists talk about ego, ID. Liars talk about venue and thought. Economists also use different type of terminology like supply, demand, elasticity, comparative advantage, consumer surplus, deadweight loss. You will encounter many new terms and some of familiar words that economists use in their specialized world. At first, this new language seems odd to you, but you will see that its value lies in this ability to provide you with a new and a useful way of thinking about world in which you live. Economists as scientists, still it's a very confusing statement. Some experts believe that economists are pure scientists, and some are still confused that economists are social scientists, are pure scientists. Economists try to address their subject with a scientific objectivity. They approach the study of the economy in much the same way a biologist approach the study of life. They devise theory, collect data, and then analyze these data in an attempt to verify or refute their theories. To the beginner, the claim that economics is a science can seem odd, but as economists do not work with the test tubes or telescope, the essence of science, however, is the scientific method, the dispassionate development, and this testing of the theory about how the world works. This method of inquiry is as applicable as this study of the nation's economy as we are studying the Earth's gravity as well. Once Einstein says that the whole of the science is nothing more than the refinement of everyday thinking. The scientific method, observation, theory, and more observation. Like we have a very famous example like Newton, in 17th century scientist and mathematician. One day he was sitting in his garden, and he saw an apple fall from a tree. This observation motivated Newton to develop a theory of gravity that applies not only to an apple falling to the earth but to any two object in the universe. Subsequent testing of the Newton theory has shown that it worked well in many circumstances. Because Newton theory has been so successful at explaining observation, it is still taught in undergraduate physics course around the world. So like that, economists also use theory, observation, and more observation. The interplay between theory and observation also occurs in economics. An economist might live in a country experiencing rapid increasing price and be moved by this observation to develop a theory of inflation. The theory might assert that high inflation arises when the government prints too much money or too much note. To test this theory, the economists would collect and analyze data on prices and money from different countries or economies. If growth in the quantity of money were completely unrelated to the rate of price increase, the economists would start to doubt the validity of this theory of inflation. If the money growth and inflation were strongly correlated in international data, as in fact they are, the economists would become more confident to this theory. The role of assumption, it is very important that the economists use or even some natural sciences also use some type of assumption to meet their desired result. So economists make assumption for some reasons. Assumption can simplify the complex world and make it easier to understand, to study the effects of international trade. For example, we might assume that world consists of only two countries and that each country produces only two goods. In reality, there are numerous countries, each of which produces thousands of different types of goods, but by considering a world with only two countries and two goods, we can focus our thinking on the essence of the problem. Once we understand international trade in this simplified imaginary world, we are in a better position to understand international trade in a more complex world in which we live. So the art of scientific thinking, whether in natural sciences or in economics, we rely on number of assumptions. So economists use different assumptions to answer different questions. Suppose that we want to study what happened to the economy when government changes the number of dollar in circulation. An important piece of this analysis is it turns out is how price respond. Many prices in the economy changes frequently. The newsstand price of magazine, for instance, change only once every few years. Knowing this fact may lead us to make different assumptions when studying the effects of the policy change over different time horizon. For studying the short-run effect of the policy, we may assume the price do not change, and we may make the extreme and artificial assumptions or all prices are completely fixed. For studying the long-run effects of the policy, however, we assume that all prices are completely flexible. So economists use different assumptions when studying the short-run and long-run effect of change in quantity of money. Economic model, like a high school biology teacher teach basic anatomy with the plastic replicas of the human body. These models have all the major organs like the heart, the liver, the kidneys, and so on, which allow teacher to show their student very simply how the important part of the body fit together. Because these plastic models are stylized and omitted many detail, no one would mistake one of them for a real person. So economists also use model to learn about the world, but unlike plastic Mankins, their model mostly consists of diagram and equations. Like a biology teacher plastic model, economic model who meet many details to allow us to see what is truly important. So just as the biology teacher model does not include all the body's muscles and tubes, and economist model does not include every feature of the economy. We use model to examine various economic issues or situation. Economists assume away many detail of the economy that are irrelevant to the question at hand. All models in the economy or economics simplify the real situation to improve our understanding. Our first model, the circular flow diagram. The economy consists of millions of people engaged in many activities: buying, selling, working, hiring, manufacturing, and so on. To understand how the economy works, we must find some way to simplify our thinking about these activities. In other words, we need a model that explains in general how the economy is organized and how participants in the economy interact with one another. Here we have draw a circular diagram. Here we suppose that there are two type of decision makings are done. That first one is the household, and the firms are the two main decision maker here. So start from the firm side. The firm produces goods and firm sells goods and services in the goods and services market, and household or individuals buy goods and services from goods and services market, and then household pays provide land, labor, and capital to the factor of production market, and the firm buy factor of production from the factor of production market, and then the firms get return or profit from goods and services market. And from this revenue, the firm pays the wages, rent, and profit to the factor of production market. And this factor of production market provide the income or salaries to the household or individuals, and then these household and individual buy or spend their income in the goods and services market. So this process will be complete. So this is the simple circular flow diagram model when we have a two individual decision maker firms and the household. Here we have our second model, another model that is the production possibilities frontier. Most economic models, unlike the circular flow diagram, are built using the tools of mathematics. Here we use one of the simplest of such model called the production possibilities frontier to illustrate some of the basic economic ideas. Real economies produce thousands of goods and services, so let's consider an economy that produces only two goods, cars and computers. So see here an economy is producing two goods, cars and computers. So if the economy produces 300 computers, the economy is using all its resources for the production of computers, and if the if the economy is using all its resources on the production of the cars, the economy can produce 1,000 cars. So the economy has to decide between 3,000 computers and 100 cars. So this is the optimal point for the production of an economy. When the economy uses all resources for the computer, it is producing 3,000 computers, and if the economy is using all its resources for the cars, it is producing 1,000 computers. If the economy wants to produce some amount of cars and some amount of computers, let's say at a point A, the economy is producing 2,000 computers and 700 cars. So less than that production possibility frontier, the firm is using inefficient resources. Like if the economy is producing 100 computers and 300 cars, here we see that the economy is working inefficiently. And if the economy wants to increase the number of computers, then it must reduce number of cars production. So see, at point C, if the economy wants to produce more computer, then it must reduce some of its cars. So at point D, the economy is unable to produce because it is not possible for the economy to produce at this point, because all of the resources of the economy are fully utilized at the production possibility frontier. So point D is showing out of the range of production possibility frontier, and point B is showing the less efficient utilization of the resources. So the production possibility frontiers show the trade-off between outputs of different goods at a given time, but the trade-off can change over time if the firm or if the economy can improve its resources or its technology as well. Microeconomics and macroeconomics. Many subjects are studied on various levels, so like that economics is also studied on various levels. We can study the decision of an individual household and firms, or we can study the interaction of household and firm in market for a specific goods and services. Or we can study the operation of the economy as a whole, which is the sum of the activities of all decision maker in all markets. So the field of economics is traditionally divided into two broad field, like microeconomics, the study of the economy in a micro level. Household and firm make decision and how they interact in a specific market. So macroeconomics, the study of the economy as a whole phenomenon. Microeconomics and macroeconomics are closely interlinked, because change in overall economy arises from the decision of millions of individuals. It is impossible to understand macroeconomic development without considering the association of microeconomic decision. The economist as a policy maker is a very interesting point, that why we consider the economist as a policy advisor. Often economists are asked to explain the causes of economic events. Why, for example, is unemployment higher for teenagers than for old workers? Sometimes economists are asked to recommend policies to improve economic outcome. What, for instance, should the government do to improve the economic well-being of the teenagers? So when economists are trying to explain the world, they are behaving like a scientist. When they are trying to help to improve it, they are technically working as a policy advisor. So when economists are a scientist or a policy maker, there are two types of analysis will be occur, that is a positive versus normative analysis. To understand and the two roles that economists play, let's examine the use of the language, because scientists and policy makers have different goals. They use the language in a different way as well. In general statement about the world come in two types. So, one type, such as Portia, is a positive statement, or descriptive. They make a claim about how the world is. A second type of statement, such as Nose, is a normative statement, or prescriptive. So a key difference between positive and normative statement is how we judge their validity. We can, in a principle, confirm or refute a positive statement by examining evidence. And economists might evaluate Portia's statement by analyzing data on changes in minimum wage and change in unemployment over time. By contrast, evaluating normative statement involves such as values as well as facts. So no statement cannot be judged using data alone. Deciding what is good or bad policy is not just a matter of science. It is also involves our views on ethic, religions, and our political philosophy as well. Positive and normative statements are fundamentally different, but within a person's set of belief, they are often interlinked. In particular, positive views about how the world works affect normative views about what policies are desirable. While talking about the positive claim that minimum wage causes unemployment, if true, it might lead to reject the normative conclusion that the government should raise the minimum wage. Yet normative conclusion cannot come from positive analysis alone. They involve value judgment as well. So why economists advice is not always followed? Any economist who advises president or prime minister or other elected leaders knows that his recommendations are not always heeded. Frustrating as this can be, it is easy to understand the process by which economic policies is actually made differs in many ways from the idealized policy process which we have studied in different textbooks of economics. So whenever we discuss economic policy, we often focus on one question: what is the best policy for the government to pursue? We act as if the policy was set by a king. Once a king has find out or figure out that what is the right policy, he has no trouble to putting his ideas into action. But in real world, figuring out the right policy is only part of leader's job, sometimes the easiest part. After a president or prime minister hears from his economic advisors about what policy is best for their perspective, he turns to the other advisor for their related input. His communication advisor will tell him how best to explain the proposed policy to the public, and they will try to anticipate any misunderstanding that might make the challenge more difficult. His press advisor will tell him how the news media will report on his proposal and what opinion will likely to be expressed on the nation editorial page. And his political advisor will tell him which group will organize to support or oppose the proposed policy, how this proposal will affect his standing among the different groups in the National Assembly, and whether it will be change support for any of the Prime Minister other policy initiative. After hearing and waiting all of these advisors, the Prime Minister or President then decide how to proceed. So making economic policy in a democratic environment is a very much a messy affair. Why economists disagree? Once George Bernard Shaw says that if all economists were led end to end, they would not reach any conclusion. Economists as a group are often criticized for giving conflicting advice to the policymaker. So here we have a main concern, that why do economists so often appear to give a conflicting advice to the policymaker? There are two basic reasons for this purpose: that the economists may disagree about the validity of alternative positive theories of how the world works. Economists may have different values and therefore different normative views about what government policy should aim to accomplish. So difference in a scientific judgment, economists often disagree for the same reason. Economics is a young science and there is still much to be learned. Economists sometimes disagree because they have different hunches about the validity of alternative theories or about the size of important parameters that measure how economic variables are related. Economists disagree about whether the government should tax household income or its consumption. Advocates of a switch from the current income tax to the consumption tax believe that the change would encourage households to save more because income that is saved would not be a tax. Higher saving in turn would free resources for the capital accumulation, leading to more rapid growth in productivity and living standard. Advocates of the current income tax system believe that the household saving would not respond much to change in the tax laws. These two groups of economists hold different normative views about the tax system because they have a different positive views about saving responsiveness to tax initiatives. Difference in value, this is a very important point, that suppose that there are two person A and person B, both have, like we are giving the name of person A and B. Suppose that Ali and Ahmed both take the same amount of water from the town well, and to pay for the maintaining the well, the town tax is put on the resident, and Ali has income of 150,000 and its tax is 15,000. It's around the 10% of his total income, while Ahmed has income of 30,000 and he is paying tax of 6,000, which is the 20% of his total income. So here, is this policy of fair to put this type of taxation? If not, who pays much and who pays too little is a more important question. And does it matter whether Ahmed's low income is due to a medical disability or his decision to pursue an acting career? And does it matter whether Ali's high income is due to a large inheritance or to his willingness to work long hours at a boring job? So these are difficult questions about which people are likely to disagree. If the town hired two experts to study how it should tax its residents to pay for the well, we would not to be surprised if they offer a conflicting advice. So this simple example shows that why economists sometimes disagree about the public policy. As we know from our discussion of normative and positive analysis, policies could not be judged on a scientific ground alone. Sometimes economists give a conflicting advice because they have different values. Perfecting the science of economics will not tell us whether who pays too much. So here, perception versus reality. Because of difference in scientific judgment and difference in values, some disagreement among economists is inevitable, yet one should not overstate the amount of disagreement. Economists agree with one another to a much greater extent than is sometimes we understood. Like we have the example here, when we are talking about a ceiling on a rent reduce the quantity and quality of the housing. So 93% economists agree on this statement. Tariff and import quotas usually reduce general economic welfare. 93% economists are agree on this statement. Economic growth is in developed countries like the United States leads to greater level of well-being. 88% economists are agree on this statement. Inflation is caused primarily by too much growth in the money supply. 83% economists are agree on this statement. A minimum wage increase unemployment among young and unskilled workers. 79% economists are agree to this statement. So we have the perception and reality data that how much economists are agree or disagree with one another. So we have discussed about thinking like an economist. So here is the summary which we have gone through yet. Economists try to address their subject with a scientist objectivity. Like all scientists, they make appropriate assumptions and build simplified models to understand the world around them. Two simple models we have discussed in our discussion, that is circular flow diagram and production possibility frontier. The field of economics is divided into two subfields, that is microeconomics and macroeconomics. Microeconomics studies decision making by household and firms and the interaction among the household and firms in the marketplace. Macroeconomists study the forces and trends that affect the economy as a whole. A positive statement in which assertions about how the world is. A normative statement is an assertion about how the world ought to be. When economists make normative statement, they are acting more as a policy advisor than as a scientist. Economists who devise advise policymakers sometimes offer conflicting advice, either because of differences in scientific judgment or because of differences in values. At other times, economists are united in the advice they offer, but policymakers may choose to ignore the advice because of many forces and constraints imposed by the political pressure at the same time. So this is all about the thinking like an economist. So see you with another video. Ciao.